Well, good morning, everyone. My name is Marie Hutchison. I will be one of your hosts today. I have the joy of serving as the creative specialist for the Bishop Bruce O. Innovation Center at United Theological Seminary in Dayton, Ohio, and partnering with our director, Sue Nelson-Kibbe. On behalf of the Innovation Center, it has been an honor to partner with the BMCR to platform the 2024 Laity Leadership Institution. And today's webinar is titled Finding Your Joy in Mission Work. And our featured speaker is Deaconess Clara Ester. In just a moment, I will ask Dr. Yvette Richards, who is the BMCR Laity Advocacy Committee Chair, to introduce Deaconess Clara. For now, let's just take a moment to pray. Father God, thank you for the amazing leadership and the servant heart of Dr. Yvette and Deaconess Clara. We are truly thankful for both of them. And we ask, Lord, that you open our hearts and our minds for what you have planned for us today to receive as you speak through Deaconess Clara. And we thank you and we praise your name for all that you're going to do. In Jesus' name we pray, and together say amen. At this time, I'd like to invite Dr. Yvette Richards, if she could share about the vision of the BMCR and everything, all the details and what it's about, and also introduce Deaconess Clara for us this morning.
Absolutely. Well, good morning once again. I am so grateful to be here. First, we must stop and thank United Innovation Center. We have been working with Marie Hutchins and Michael Pollard, our technician, now in our second year. The advocacy team of Black Methodists for Church Renewal determined that laity leadership opportunities of equipping, educating, and gaining guidance and wisdom from our leaders was needed. So the advocacy team developed the Laity Leadership Institute. Through my working and educational track at United Theological Seminary, I sent an email to our president, Dr. Kent Millard, and asked him, was there someone I could work with at United that would receive and work with the laity? As a layperson, sometimes we don't have a seat at many tables. And through long conversations, I was first set up with Dr. Picardo, who was my mentor in the Rooted team. And then he got busy, and God had a plan, and then turned me on to a wonderful leader that I had seen in person many times and heard, Reverend Sue Kibbe. In meeting with Reverend Sue Kibbe, we hit the ground running. I explained to her our vision and the reason for it. And not only did they step up, but they have elevated this program beyond my wildest dreams. We have now partnered with the Bruce O. Innovation Center that is connected to United Theological Seminary, and have been blessed to work with Marie Hutchins, who has been a stalwart in ensuring that our platform is available and that our speakers are aligned and our message gets out. So thank you, Maria. It has been difficult, sisters and brothers, to say that sometimes we don't get as many people to register, but what they have done is that they have recorded all of our webinars and placed it on a dashboard under the Bruce O. Innovation Center for us. And we are absolutely grateful. And so at this time, this moment, I would like to introduce you to an advocate, a child of God, a deaconess, a tree shaker, a foundation for the history in which we stand on in making a difference, not only in the lives of our community, but communities around the world. I would like to introduce you to my friend, my mentor, Deaconess Clara Ester.
Thank you, Yvette. It's a joy to see you and to meet your team this morning and to be present with those that are on this call. Let me begin by saying I was stunned when I was asked to do this presentation. I don't see my life history as anything that unusual. But let me begin by sharing my story, because I have found joy in doing mission work. And it started with my parents, I think, more than anyone, and then my church, and then the struggle, and then being engaged as a child with deaconesses at a United National Mission Institution in Memphis. My mother was a cook, and she was an excellent cook. She handed down most of her skills to me. As a child, I did not record, nor did I take pride in wanting to know anything about cooking. And so haphazardly, I can actually prepare a really decent meal. But my mom would cook and share what she provided. Every holiday, even Christmas, when we would wake up and open our toys, and we would have to then go to church, because church always had a Christmas morning, no matter whether it was Saturday or Sunday. And when we would come home, we'd play a little bit, and then we would eat that turkey and dressing and ham and all the trimmings that came with it. And then my mother started packing up food. Now, we were walking people because we didn't have a car. And after leaving church, we had already passed 6 of these homes we're taking food to. And now we got to walk blocks back with toys under the tree to deliver food. My mother showed me in life that God provides for us, and that we have to also provide for others. And to this day, every holiday, I find some item. Christmas, I take fruit to everyone that's in our congregation that's sick and shut in. My son, that's mentally challenged, will say, have we bought the fruit yet, Mom, so I can put them in the boxes or the bags to deliver and visit with people that are sick and shutting in. That lesson came from my mom. I take joy and pride in that. The fruit has gone up in price, and I sit up and say, oh my goodness, how would she have managed? But I purchase it and decorate the bags. And my son helps, and we spend the time before leaving, coming to Chicago to be with family and to cook that particular thing. Easter, I do something different. Easter, sometimes you can find cookies that are decorated, or you can find other items that you can take to the sick and shut in. But I also take communion to the sick and shut in on a regular basis when I'm in the city. Every month, I try to make my rounds to make sure that Holy Communion is available, that we care enough for those that are not able to come to church at this time, and that we show that love and that compassion that we have for them by allowing them to be a part of the worship service that's being Zoomed. And when the pastor says, this is the body of Christ, they can take that body and participate with us. And communion has always been an important element of my life. My mother worked as a basic cook. And deaconesses in the past were not paid a really elegant salary by no means. They were provided lodging. They had a food allowance. They also had a travel allowance, but travel was very limited for them. And there were these two deaconesses, an older woman and a younger woman, that was at the center where my mother cooked for them a meal each day, other than weekend. And she would prepare food on Friday that would get them through the weekend. They had another lady that worked there that did the ironing and the laundry and the cleaning. And those two deaconesses literally adopted my brother and I. I don't care what was going on. We had to go to Bethlehem Center. And as children, parents weren't leaving you at home alone. As children back in the day, you had to be under the care of an adult somewhere. And the things that I learned from them, I would have never thought that it would be something that I would have grasped a hold to and put to use for the rest of my life. But I saw unconditional love. And I've shared the story numerous times of how this one day they asked me to go with them through the housing project to visit this lady that was blind. And we walked down the street to her house and walked in. And I will never forget the little brown roaches that were all over her house. They were on the wall. They were on every inch of furniture. She said, "Have a seat." And I'm looking to stand up. I'm not going to sit down because I see roaches. And I want to crush them. And but the two deaconesses had the same eyes my mom had, and they would sort of glance at me, and I would straighten up, and they said, "Jean, take a seat," and I did. The little lady finally, through conversation that they were having that I didn't even pay that much attention to, but they were asking her things like, how do you get around? How do you manage in this apartment, being blind and living alone? And she would explain that vision problem and say, sometimes I may mistake some item and end up opening it and thinking that it was green beans in a can. And she said, but I have come accustomed to accepting whatever I open, I fix it and eat it. They asked her, could they look around the house? And they saw things that they felt could be managed a lot easier if the housing board fixed it. She was almost at the point she was in a wheelchair. She was moving very slowly and having difficulty functioning. Her bedroom was upstairs. There was a sofa in the room we were in. She slept on it a lot of times when her legs wouldn't allow her to do the stairwell. In the meantime, she gets up and goes to the kitchen and she puts hot water on to boil so she could make tea. And she had baked some oatmeal cookies. And I love oatmeal cookies. But I'm thinking roaches and blind, and you told us you mistake things that you open when you're cooking. And so I didn't want any cookies because I was combining the roaches with the raisins. And I'm just thinking this is not something that I want to engage in today. And so when she came by with the cookies, I said, no, thank you. And the two deaconesses looked at me, and then the lady said, all children love cookies. And the children in this neighborhood, I bake cookies for them all the time. And they come and knock on my door to ask me, do I have cookies today? And I finally took a cookie. She insisted I take two. And I played with that one cookie for the duration of the visit. And the other cookie, and most of the first one that I was engaging in, I took out and I fed the birds and the ants or any other creature that wanted them, because I was insistent that she may have made a mistake. And I asked the two deaconesses when we were walking back to the center, didn't you see the roaches? And we did also see a larger critter with a tail. And I said, didn't y'all see that? And they talked to me about how she offered hospitality. She invited them into her home. She prepared food and drink for them. And the only way that we could act was to receive it. And I didn't get that as an 8-year-old child. I later connected those dots of the importance of that, the importance of giving her value, of her blind life, her mistakes in the kitchen fixing food, but to offer that kind of respect back to her by engaging in hot tea and cookies. I learned about unconditional love through those two deaconesses. I learned so many things that they valued and wanted for low-income families on housing projects. They wanted them to have the best. And I went to school, got my degree in elementary education, wanted to teach school until I got into student teaching. And I think God played a role in making it a probably worst student teaching experience that a student could have. And I started thinking, here I am at this point of this educational step in my life, and I'd have made the wrong choice of what I want to do with the rest of my life. The first day in student teaching, I had gone to the school before. It's an elementary school around the corner from where I lived. I went there in the 4th and 5th grade. And I went over to meet the teacher, supervising teacher. And we hit it off. I saw the students. I thought they were wonderful because they were under her control. And the day I showed up, that Monday, for my tenure with that school, her mother was sick. And she had left that Friday early from school, going to some part of Mississippi. Her mother was terminal, and she was gone the entire time I was doing my student teaching. The principal said to me, if you need anything, holler. And I was almost screaming because the children were like, oh, you're fresh meat. And they treated me as fresh meat. And they were literally standing in the chairs. They were playing basketball with their paper, just shooting it at the wastebasket. They were having a great time. There was nothing I could do for 2 days to control them. The principal came in one day, the second day, for a moment, and she told them, students, and they sat at a tent hut. And I realized that the gentleness wasn't working, and that I had to create something to drive them to want to learn. I had to do something different than the courses I had taken didn't share. What do you do when you go into an environment and you know nobody and they don't know you and they're testing you? How do you manage that? That was not in any book I read. And I finally that weekend started creating games to teach them how to spell, games to do math. We would have quiz stuff that was fun, and they would be fighting to get chosen to answer the question. And I was so exhausted. Every day, my social life ceased, and I was always preparing for the next day for the students and dreading the fact that I had to go back to that classroom. Um, the teacher in charge showed back up maybe 2.5 weeks later, the last 2 days of my student teaching. And she praised me because the students knew that they couldn't do the things that I brought for them to do that they enjoyed doing if they didn't give respect. And she said, I'm amazed. My first day with this group was really off the edge. Well, if she had been there to help that transition, I probably would have had a better time and stayed in the educational place. But that was not, I think, what God was asking and calling me to do. I got engaged in college with the sanitation strike in Memphis. My love, Pastor Jim Lawson, that just recently passed at the age of 95, that worked diligently for years before he became our pastor with Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And Lawson's story is a story that when his memoirs come out in 2025, I encourage you to purchase the book and simply read about this great giant, because he was the person that put together, he was the strategist for the civil rights movement. Martin King asked him to come to Nashville and teach nonviolence. United Methodist Women's Division pulled Lawson in to go to India as a missionary. And this was after he had served 13, 14, 15 months in prison for not fighting in the Korean War. And he refused to fill out the paperwork to be a conscientious objector. He wanted to be treated like anyone else, not because he was going into the ministry, but because he was a human being that didn't believe in war and killing. King heard about his missionary work studying while he was in India and wanted to meet him. And Jim shared what he learned about Gandhi and felt that that was something that could work in the United States. And Martin engaged him to move south and help create that foundation. We all think Martin King did it all. Martin King had a team. We all have to have teams in doing whatever we do in life. That's what gives you the joy sometimes of being in mission, is that you have a body of people, and each person does the role they're supposed to achieve and accomplish for that cause. And if they do their part and you do your part, it all comes together and it all works out. No person can create the movement that we lived in. After I had some troubling times after Martin's assassination, and I felt the need that I needed to get out of Memphis and my hometown that I loved. Knew everybody, and I went into a strange land. And once again, United Methodist Women, Deaconess Community Center department that was in place at that point, they recommended that I go to Mobile to help put together a program. It was a transitional community. And in that community, whites had moved out, blacks had moved in, not 100% at that point, but the center had no clue of what to do. And so it was fresh breath. It was fresh air for me to leave a struggling sanitation issue that had resolved itself at that time, but to leave the movement and go into a different environment was probably healthy for me. And in doing so, I started working at this community center. And I was there to survey and make recommendations for 5 months. And that 5 months turned into my serving for 37 years. Are all days good days? No. Are all days easy days? No. I think with joy, you have failures. I think with joy, you have hardships. I think with joy, you have disappointments. Joy comes after you go through sometimes struggles. And it was relatively easy to engage the community around that center. They just needed to know that the center was real about what they were saying. And they had shut them out for all these years. And so I started playing kickball in Foursquare and took jacks to children's porches and played jacks with them. I took cards and played old maids with little children and all the things that you can do to engage children in activities where nothing is going on was easy. I grew up at this community center in Memphis. I was good at every game you could imagine, going every day, all day. I could put a puzzle together in no time. And so I wanted to share what life could be like with this community center right here in your neighborhood that can serve you. But one of the key things was getting to know the parents. And I got to know them through their children. Because the children would go home and say, Mama, this woman played dodgeball or whatever we did. And she's wonderful because nobody was playing with the children other than them simply playing with themselves and not necessarily with balls or bats or any of those games that I took. They were just playing hide and go seek and running and chasing each other. And so I brought something into the community that they were lacking. And it's easy to do that. It's easy to go into a place and start things that are not there. It's more difficult to go into a place and start things where it's already booming and create a project or a program that people grab a hold to. That's a little bit more difficult to do. And so most of the things that I learned as a child, ballet, I learned how to play piano, I learned how to play a violin, I learned how to play a saxophone. We started off with this little piece of equipment called a tonette that had the basic keys on it. And we would have recitals where our parents and neighborhood people would come and witness. We had art classes. We learned how to do watercoloring. We learned how to do charcoal. We learned how to paint with paint. Everything you could imagine. We had a shuffleboard court. We had a ping pong table. We had a croquet set. The youngest deaconess brother came and laid cement on the back field for a single tennis court. It wasn't the complete size of a tennis court, but it was a tennis court for us as children. I wanted children in Crichton, in Mobile, Alabama, to have that same opportunity. We brought the group from Birmingham, a symphony group, to the center, and they had young people to go through classes of it was just a Saturday, but they would learn how to do a drum. They would learn ballet. They would learn whatever. And I remember on the funny side, the boys seeing these young men in these tights, and they were like, man, I would never put that on. Look, I mean, and they were just laughing and pointing and looking. And I asked one of the gentlemen that had come, what salary did they make? And when they quoted what they started off making, dancing, my guys got up and said, where do you sign up for this particular job? And where do you get those pants you got on? And they were ready to put them on because they felt like I can make money, I can dance, I can do this. And so every opportunity that I could sense would be beneficial. We had career days during spring break when we would take them all week and they would select where they wanted to spend the rest of their days. And some people wanted to be nurses, some wanted to be lawyers. And this one young man went and spent the day with the lawyer. And he was so impressed and still wanted to practice law until he went into the law library and he saw all the books. And when he came back, he said, I really want to be a lawyer, but I can't do all that reading. And he flipped his thought on what he wanted to become. He later actually became a lawyer because he understood that you specialize in a particular field. You don't read necessarily all the books that are in the library. In that library, those books are for every field that lawyers are specifying their concerns with. And we had a young man that wanted to be an 18-wheeler driver that drives an 18-wheeler truck now. He's probably retired now. We've had people that wanted to do all sorts of things. Those that wanted to be nurses found out in the career week that they couldn't stomach the blood, and they changed in middle school and high school the thought on what their career would hold. I have had a fun-filled life, simply working with children and youth and parents and seniors and people in our church, people in the neighborhood where you live. It's something about giving back and appreciating what people gave to you. And our church used to embrace us. Our church used to punish us when we did wrong, as well as our neighbors. And now we're fearful sometimes of discussing things with people's children. Sometimes our own families' children, because of the way they want to raise children today. But I think it's important that we step into territories where we are the stranger. And I have to say that for several months, I was a stranger, but I created through love and service a relationship in a strange land. And that's where my family is. No kin by blood, but kin through our Lord and Savior. We're in a kingdom and not in working toward a kingdom. We're in the kingdom relationship with people, and we have to hang on to those thoughts. We have to hang on to the fact that that's the kind of things that work better in our world. We want to get rid of the old and create new things. And then as we look at how we're sometimes failing with the new things, we can go back and sometimes snap something from the past as if it's new, but it was done then and it worked. And some things we have to tweak and make better. I do want to open this up to conversation. And so anyone that feels that they have a question at any time, you can put it in the chat and I'll try to respond to it.
Deaconess Claire, I've come off mute. When you talked about relationships, can you speak a little bit more on how you developed these different relationships from when you were younger and then now seasoned, some of the things that you might can share with the laity in regards to building that relationship within the community, and then maybe touching on building the relationship with your pastor to be a helper in moving the vision forward. Thank you.
Relationships are, as I think back, are not that difficult if you work at it. And sometimes it's because the other party has something maybe that you want, or the other party sees that you have something that they want. And I go back to childhood of the friends that were part of my growing up days. One had a stand-up pool that you had to put the water in, and nobody had a swimming pool in their yard. And we would pass her house. My other friend, we would pass her house, and we wanted to swim in her pool. And our relationship built around our inviting her to come to our house and play with the water sprinkler. And she eventually invited us to come to her house to get in her actual pool. Anita Perry and I are still friends. Roseanne Scott that had the sprinkler. We're still friends. That as a child, it was the girls on the street. And we became a girls' club by working toward the three of us, adding the other four girls that lived on our block, because we couldn't do no more than a block. It becomes a lot harder to build relationships if you are trying to change something. And the Charter for Racial Justice, we have had, for the last couple of years, we have aggressively been trying to train and change mindset and build relationships. I tell people, Yvette, all the time that I may come across sometimes, especially in a white crowd, being so caught into the racist part of our world. But that's me. That's who I am at this point. And for all the days that I can remember, injustice was wrong, and I wanted to fix it. And we have been trying to build relationships with people because only through relationships can you move to a point that you can talk about hard stuff. I have a friend in Mobile that I dearly love, and she dearly loves me, and we disagree on everything. But riding with her, or her riding with me to meetings, we would get on a subject every trip we take: profiling, police brutality, some racist issue. And she would stand her grounds. But I was at an event and I was talking about priorities of United Methodist Women then, and one of them was criminalization of people of color, which is still one of the priorities. But it was when it first came out. And I had mentioned the other three. And before I could get that one out, that woman that disagrees with everything jumped up and stood up and said, "Don't forget criminalization of people of color." And she talked for 20 minutes about conversations we had had. She said, they're locking them up for not paying child support. How can they pay child support if they're in prison? They need to let the gates open and release people for these minor crimes. We got people bringing in heavy drugs, and they have been, some people that, because of color, have been locked up with 2 joints of marijuana for 6 years. And somebody that has done murder get out quicker than they do. I could not believe the words that came from her mouth. But in conversation about profiling, I had shared a story with her of how I got pulled over when I had purchased a new car, and how they wanted to know what I filed on my income tax. They wanted to know where I worked, how could I afford that Buick Skylark. And I was telling her how I finally said to the officer, you just need to take me on downtown because I'm not going to share information that I don't have to. I've given you the registration to the car. I've given you my license. I've given you information that you're required to ask, and I'm required to give it to you. But you're now dipping in a territory. And she said to me how wrong that was. And I said, but they pull people over all the time because of the color of their skin, and for no reason but to question and find information. And I said, it's a regular thing, and it happens to people like me that she cares for, that friendship. But we have to also learn to come out of our shell. I live in a mixed community. I know the Vietnamese family. I know several white families. They know me. Matter of fact, right now, my neighbor across the street, white couple, called me and said my yard guy was there, and they told him not to do the yard. We had not had rain. Wait till the storm comes through and come back next week. So I wouldn't be charged for a yard cut that wasn't necessary. My white friends, my white neighbors, and all we do is look out for each other. But we have conversations, and we've had all sorts of conversations. We have to start talking to people, and we also have to start sharing sometimes our personal hurt, and we have to correct people when they say something or do something that offends us. And they need to do that with us as well. If we don't grow together, we'll never build on, and we have to educate each other. Our school system did a horrible job in teaching us the truth of the world. I grew up in an all-Black school, and our Black history instructors did an excellent job sharing books that we ought to read, telling us about Crispus Attucks, telling us about people you never hear about or read about in our American history books. And then we look at how we're trying to remove books and our history from schools today. Relationships are great. We have to always be honest. And I tell people, and this is really strictly around the racial concerns. I tell and encourage people all the time, don't spend a lot of time talking to people that think like you. Pick somebody to be in a growing and building stage that don't think like you, like the lady that I rode with for years, and have simple conversations and eat meals with her. And go shopping when you go out of town, you go to the mall and you do all this stuff and fun stuff. And at some point, start talking about, did you see where this happened? And get their feedback on it. I was talking to a white group in Montgomery, and this older white gentleman got up and asked the question. He said, my best friend, my wife and I go out and we eat every week with my best friend. And he said that they cannot have 5 minutes sitting down before he starts talking about how some Black group did this and did you hear about that? And he said he don't have anything good to say about anybody Black. And so I said to the white guy, I said, well, next time y'all go, I suggest you pay for the meal. And I said, when he brings that up and says, we're no good, we're whatever label he wants to put on us, I said, correct him and say, man, that's not true. I was at church last Wednesday night, and I met this awesome Black woman, and she was off the edge. And I know all of them can't be as bad as you're talking about, because I met Clara, Ester, and we laughed. We laughed about it. And in that laughter, you come up with breaking the ice, but also opening a window, just a little crack for that man to say, if nothing else. And then the next dinner, next week, you have a different conversation and you bring another window opening up, and we can change the world if we do it window inch by window inch. But I encourage groups that we have window inch and then we've closed the window. And we're window inching, and hopefully we're going to get to a point that it's open a little wider and we don't close the window again. It's an effort. It's an effort for me, but it's an effort for Maria. It's an effort for Mike. It's an effort for all of us to make our world a better world. That's my goal in life, that I want to see it become what I thought was turning into before the doors and the windows shut on us a few years ago. Any other questions? I also encourage you to look at things that you may not even think about in life. I had an almost fatal accident in 1985, going to Memphis to funeralize my father. And I couldn't remember. I had a horrible head injury, lost my cranial nerve, seventh nerve was totally destroyed, and it can actually come back. It did not connect, so I still do have some paralysis. I do have some memory loss that my brother can remember everything. Gene, remember when we were 2 and the aunt came up on the porch and sat in that chair? And I'm going, I was 2 wrong. I don't remember when I started to walk, but my brother remembers well. And those kinds of things we didn't talk about when I was laying in the hospital bed. My family and my friends in Memphis were told by my neurologist and my psychiatrist to feed me information, continue to talk to me about my life in the past so that it would help the cranial nerve connect again. And I thank God every day. But because of that, another part of my joy in life has been making certain that people that are sick and shut in are not forgotten. I was hospitalized 3.5 months in Memphis. I had to live in a rehab for 6 months that I dreaded because it was hard work. But the people that surrounded me gave me support, told me I would walk again, where doctors in Memphis, when they discharged me, said that I may never walk again. I may never regain all of my memory. I will probably never, if I do walk without assistance of a walker or cane or something. I'm getting to where I'm needing one now. But in 1985, 1986, and 1987, I fought to stay on this side of the earth. And because of that, it was due to a lot of good, positive relationships. The accident was right outside of Memphis, and my family was all coming for my dad's funeral. But all my high school classmates and college classmates that stayed in Memphis came to see me. My church family came to see me, and anytime anyone is sick, there's joy if you take that time to just sit by that bedside and hold a hand or be with a family member when they are facing what's going to happen to their loved one. That's what Jesus did. Now, he may have been late showing up for Lazarus, and the sisters got upset, but look at the miracle that he created once he got there. And we are in a miracle making mode if we offer it to each other. My life has always been around love, because that's what I received and that's what I was taught to give.
Sister Claire, Dr. Martha Banks has her hand raised. And so, Dr. Martha, if you come off mute and ask Deaconess Claire your question, and welcome Dr. Banks.
Thank you. And I am thanking God for bringing you through, Sister Clara. I really appreciate hearing about that miracle because we need you. And we're very grateful. I wanted to ask if you could talk a bit more about the way that God prepared you for the mission and the outreach that you have done. You talked about teaching school and the difficulties of the classroom, and yet when you described what you did at the community centers with the children, that was using all of the best of your training in education. When you talked about your exposure to so much music as a child, you took all of that and gave it and gave it and gave it. So if you can talk a bit more about the way God prepares us, and we don't necessarily realize, oh, I don't need to use it necessarily in place A when it's really needed in places B, C, D, E, and F. So if you can address that, I'd appreciate it.
I think, thank you, Dr. Banks. It's good to see you again. I think sometimes in my life, from my accident in particular, when I couldn't walk, I had adopted a 4-year-old boy right before the accident. He was right at 5. And he's mentally challenged, and he was extremely hyperactive. And my mother was older, a lot older, and could not manage my son. And I remember my brother took him after the funeral to Chicago to live with him for the whole time I was in the hospital. So almost a year. I didn't get my son back until after I was discharged from rehab. So we're talking 9.5 months or so. But when I did, my brother had brought him to visit, and they allowed me to go home for the day from rehab. That's Sunday. And my son was running. My brother had gone to the store to stock the house for my mom. And my son was running circles around her. And I remember how the pain, the headaches I had, I crushed my left pelvic and broke the right. My fingers, 3 or 4 of my fingers were broken on every hand. The head injury in itself, and I had a lot of internal bleeding, so I had a lot of surgery there. And then the doctors had told me as I was being discharged that I needed to be tested for HIV/AIDS because I'd had several transfusions. And I remember actually having this discussion with God, like, what's up with this? I've gone through all this pain and trauma and didn't get to go to my dad's funeral. Don't remember the family that was here. I'm struggling. I don't remember my ABCs hardly. And now you're telling me I got HIV/AIDS. What have I done, Lord? And I remember being so depressed that my neurologist, but more so my psychiatrist, saw the need for me to go home and to discharge me to Memphis and to Mobile. And I get to Mobile and I leave the airport in an ambulance to go to a rehab and don't even go by the house. And I'm still upset and I'm still frustrated. But my brother brings my son to visit, and I see how my son is doing my mom. And I want him to have a life. I don't want to see him back in foster homes. And I'm trying to say, I'm not going to be here to raise him. I'm not going to be able to raise him. We got to give him back to the state. And because my mom can't take care of him. My brother already has a child. He has put him up in daycare. That's extra expense. He may not have been in a financial state at that point where he could have taken care, but he never talked about it. I never paid for it. But all of that's going through my mind. And I gave up. I gave up and said, I'd rather not be here if I can't remember and if I can't walk and if I can't. But the bright side was that seeing that circle, I realized the hope I had for him, the life I anticipated for him had to come because I was there to offer it, that I couldn't push myself aside and not take responsibility for that little boy. And I started fighting. I went back to the rehab, wanted to go into the exercise room and lift stuff, and they wouldn't let me do it on Sunday. But every day they gave me 30 minutes while they were supervising other people to stay there and do whatever I wanted to do. And I tell people today that the gain from that is one of my friends just had knee replacement. And her first one, she said she didn't feel nothing. She said, it didn't bother her. She got up and she's back up walking in no time. But this one has really kicked her, and she said, it's so painful. And I said, thank God for pain. I said, if you're not hurting when you're trying to fix it, you ain't getting no better. You gotta hurt sometimes to get better. And I started working out so I could stay here a day longer. And I felt like I didn't leave here or I didn't go into a state of depression because I saw the need and God felt the need that my mama couldn't handle my son. And we're going to let her stay around so she can. But I also think, Dr. Banks, God does not call those that are qualified to do things, but he qualifies those that he called. And I think every inch of my life, whatever I needed was set forth for me to go forward and do whatever it is that I've done in life. Because all I want to do is try to help somebody. And I want to help people move from this point to another point. I want to continue to stand up and fight for justice. And life is short and life can be long. Martin saw 39 years. Jim Lawson saw 95. My friend in Colombia has seen 100 and still walking and moving faster than me, and indicated that he gave his car up a year ago. He said, nobody made me, but I gave it up and bought a golf cart. And if I live to be 100, I'm hoping to be as useful as Melvin West is today to try to provide mobility vehicles for people that are not able to get around. And that's his dream, and that's been his life. And I hope if I live long enough, I can still clearly see injustice and stand up for justice. But I think God allows us to stay here until we have completed his desires, not ours, but his. And he gives us the tools we need to do that. I hope that answered.
Deaconess Clara, I know. Oh, go ahead, Dr. Banks.
I was just saying, thank you so much.
Deaconess Clara, you didn't speak about this, but your advocacy has run from when you were younger, seasoned in Mobile, and now the work that you're doing as a deaconess. I would like for you, if you would just touch briefly, and I know it can't be briefly, on the advocacy and the passion that came about the work that you did as a college student with Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.
Well, I think it started when I was probably 6, and this is before Emmett Till's death. My dad worked for the railroad, Illinois Central, and he was a laborer, but he also was given great benefits. And so we could travel anywhere in the United States that Illinois Central train was running on a pass, free. And so we got family, and my mom's family was in Knoxville. We were going to visit them, and she wanted us to see Lookout Mountain in Chattanooga. And we stopped in Chattanooga in the train terminal area, and we get off, and we are there for a couple of hours before Lookout Mountain's going to open. And we're laying, my brother and I are sleeping on her lap. And my mother has Choctaw Native American blood, straight hair, very fair complexion. And if it wasn't for my brother and I, could pass for white. My dad on the other side was darker skin tone. And my mom is sitting there, and they don't see my brother and I. But then my mom wakes us up and said, let's go to the bathroom before we go across to get something to eat and go to Lookout Mountain. And we go into this immaculate bathroom. And as we're coming out, one of the workers spot us and chastise my mother about knowing better than going in the white only. And she said she just simply did not see the other section. And he said, you know your place, and had his finger in her face and was talking to her a lot rougher than my brother and I had ever heard anyone talk to my mom. My dad didn't talk to her in that tone. And, you know, My brother's 18 months older. He's ready to fight. I'm ready to assist. And at that point, we go across the street to a cafe. And because of the law of the land, my brother was not allowed to go in the cafe. And he's asking the question, why? Now, we didn't ask the question, why is this guy talking to you like this? What does he mean you in the wrong section? And then my mother just holds up a finger and says, one day. But she kept my brother outside because we were not raised not to look at people, because we were raised in a Black community, went to a Black church, went to Black school, and we were told by our teachers, look at us and not hold your head down, which was the way children should act around white people. My mother didn't want my brother eyeballing the lady in the cafe. Look at what happened to Emmett Till from a whistle or a wink, which was a lie anyway. But the fact that he went in the cafe or the store in Money, Mississippi. But my mom and dad would never tell us the way the world was. They just said one day. And then the sanitation strike kicks in. But in between that, Emmett Till is murdered. And he's in the Jet magazine. And my dad leaves the center page open where the little 14-year-old is in a casket, hadn't been embalmed. His head is larger than normal. He looks horrible. And he left it open for, seemed like years, as a warning every time my brother walked out the house. Because the rule was, your butt is to be back in this house before the sun comes down. And then the rule was, but if by chance you get caught out there and the sun has come down, don't run home, walk home. And my brother would come in sometimes and he'd have to explain to Dad why he was late. And I would say to him, Daddy gonna whoop your butt because you should have run home. You could have got here maybe a little after the sun went down, but you walked. And Ron said, yeah, Daddy said to walk. And that made no sense to us. But if you were running and the sun had gone down and police saw you, it was another day that you might not see. And so those kinds of things hit us as children, but not to the point of the fact that we had an opportunity if we challenged the system. I didn't learn that until high school, that you can challenge the system and change things if the challenge is right. And so the sanitation hits while I'm in college. And like I said, Jim Lawson is my pastor, and we're having mass meetings in every church possible in the city of Memphis. Martin meets at our church a couple of times. And I got really engaged as a college student in the sanitation situation, to see families that had nothing. On a rainy day, they still had to get up and go to work to be told they weren't going to work. And then they had to put gas in the car to get there, or ride the bus to get there, where the white workers got to clock in and stay all day and get paid for doing nothing. But the sanitation workers knew they had to get up and go to work to be told to go home. they couldn't be a part of a union to get anything that they needed. They were being paid low wages, no health care. And what happened in Memphis was a simple thing as a thunderstorm that hit the truck. And you had Cole and Walker that went to the cab of the truck and asked the white driver, with this electric storm, can we sit up here? And the guy tells them, you know your place. And they get in the back of the garbage truck and lightning hits it and it starts spinning. And it tears the bodies up of two men that had no benefits, had no rights, couldn't use a bathroom if they went to a gas station to wash their hands, to eat their lunch. They just took the gloves off and proceeded in eating the food they had brought after picking up people's garbage. Treated like inhuman beings. And the strike kicks off. The strikers marched down to City Hall and said enough is enough. And we got engaged. And every day, it was something that is driven in a person, but it was like waking up. When I woke up, I knew I was going to school. I was going to take my break during the day to get all my homework done. I studied harder then so I could get in the car and drive to Cleveland Temple and help make posters of food, fix food for the sanitation workers, and then go pick it, and then come back to a mass meeting, and then come home. And sometimes there were meetings after meetings. And so we did that for months. And I became a youth activist. So I was going around the high schools, Black high schools, and the Black colleges. Well, we only had two, Lemoyne and Owen, that later merged, but we went to Memphis State and engaged Black students and white students that would listen to join in and boycott downtown. Even if you don't march and picket, boycott with us. Don't shop there. There was this night that April 3rd, Martin King did his I've Been to the Mountaintop speech. It was a horrible thunder tornado watch storm. They told him, don't worry about coming. But this was held at Mason Temple that could seat over 2,000 and some people. And he was called at the hotel and said, you need to get dressed. Folks didn't come to hear Ralph's tonight, Abernathy. And everybody that spoke eulogized Dr. King because they were killing time. And so everybody got up, said, I remember Martin when I was 20 years old, and they would take their life up to 40, and all the things they had done with him. And the same thing happened when Ralph Abernathy spoke. But then when Dr. King got there, he eulogized himself. If you can go back and play the recording, he talked about how he was stabbed in New York City by a mentally challenged Black woman that asked him, are you Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.? He was autographing his book. And he said, yes. And she took a letter opener and jabbed him in his chest, and it was close to his aorta. And if it had punctured that, he would have bled out. And he talked about all the letters and telegrams from kings and presidents and queens and dignitaries all over the country. He said, but there was one letter from a 5-year-old white girl that said she read, if I had sneezed, I would have died. And the little girl wrote, I'm so glad that you didn't sneeze. And then he says, I'm so glad I didn't sneeze either, because I wouldn't have been in Montgomery. And he takes it all the way up to I Wouldn't Be Here Tonight in Memphis, Tennessee, standing up for sanitation workers. Eulogized himself. And then the next day, he's speaking again. But James Orange, Philadelphia, Mississippi, SCLC staff, I was working closely with James and Jim Bevel and a couple of other SCLC staff, and they talked about having dinner, or early dinner at the Lorraine, where Dr. King had catfish that morning. And so we head over to the hotel, and I pull up and park pretty much at the stairwell that I ran up. But we're walking towards the lobby to get to the restaurant part, and he comes out of his room, chatting to people below. And what sounds like a truck backfiring, because I've never been in hunting grounds to hear a rifle or a gun shot. And it's not like today where you could be anywhere and hear a gun go off. All of a sudden, this loud boom. But I'm looking at him, and he's lifted up and thrown back. And I know he's hurt. My assumption is that he got shot. He got hit because of the way he went back. That if he was ducking, he would have just went down. And I take off running up the steps. He's in a pool of blood. I step over him and look like his chest is not moving. I try to get a pulse from the wrist, and I guess I'm not holding it long enough because it's so faint. And I unbuckled his belt and his pants button, trying to help him breathe easier. I can see his chest rise, and then seems like hours later go down. He's constantly bleeding. I spot towels and a hamper where they were cleaning rooms down at the far end, and I said, bring some towels. And they brought towels, and this undercover officer that we were not aware of, places the towel on his neck, and I removed myself from being that close to his body for this officer to do that. And there was no time wasted that we could hear the ambulance coming. And then it's 6:01. We get the news that he didn't make it. Everything got quiet. The amazing thing to me, and I'm not comparing Jesus on the cross, so don't misinterpret, but the amazing thing to me was that on that day, it seemed like the sun was out when I got there. And as the news came, it was pitch black clouds over the city of Memphis. And Martin checked out. He was tired, had a smile on his face because he was joyfully talking to people, happy getting ready to go to eat supper with Billy Cowles, and had threats on his life, but he had a mission. He was on God's mission, and he did all he could. And things were starting to flip. If you know about the 68s, Black Panthers were active. They were in Memphis. Stokely Carmichael was active with Black Power. And so there were other movements moving into what my generation at that time would have probably ventured into more than We Shall Overcome. Because we could have seen what we would have thought an expedited process to get into where we want to be, rather than a one-on-one relationship building process for freedom and equality. And so I'm not saying Dr. King could not have done much, much more. He did not hesitate to talk to H. Ralph Brown and Stokely Carmichael. They met and conversed and agreed on some things. When you look at his relationship with Malcolm X, and toward the end, how him and Malcolm X had come together, that they were on the same page in the same book. But they may have been paragraphs apart compared to being in books apart prior to things that were happening with Malcolm, as well as where Martin stood on certain issues. But
Deaconess Clara, thank you for that. And speaking now, what can we do? Well, first of all, thank you. I know it's so hard for you to go back and relive that, because that's a moment in time that the whole world experienced from afar, but you experienced up close and personal. And I know it wasn't really revealed until the 50th anniversary with your interview with Lester Holt. By the way, I was talking to Claire Ester, and she's like, Yvette, I got to call you back. Lester Holt is on the other line. So we bring light to that, but that's heavy. That's heavy in terms of walking through that. So what is it that you would share that we can do today to ensure all the foundation and the hard work that young people like you and Dr. King and the individuals that are unnamed that stood up and fought for that? So how do we take all of that was laid out, Emmett Till's death, and spark a movement nowadays that we must continue to protect our rights and our freedoms and the equal pay for women and all that is taking place now? What are some encouraging words and opportunities that you think are available for us now? Thank you, Deaconess.
That movement is there. Black Lives Matter is still so much alive. Black Lives Matter took a recess, regretfully, for the Biden election. And if you will recall, during that campaigning time with the president that was elected, Donald Trump, and Joe Biden, Black Lives Matter was everywhere, and they were doing things. And the conversation came up on, so let me retract a second. Normally, every movement that you will have outside agitators. And those agitators are there either planned and placed there to disrupt your cause, or the window of opportunity becomes a thought for those that think about, well, if it breaks into a little disruption, I might be able to get some Nike tennis shoes. And so you got that crowd ready to move into a store, but you also got these outside agitators that are against everything, that are put in place to actually stir up incidents at Black Lives Matter, at Martin King's events, one of the marches in Memphis, the store owner actually had somebody breaking a window from the inside of the store out. And when that clash was heard, this body of folks, invaders in Memphis, joined in picking up sticks and looting. And it was disruptive. We later found out they had even been paid off to do that. And so you got that always going against any movement. And so they didn't want violence and looting to take place while Biden was running. And they were trying to do everything they could to hopefully get him elected. And Black Lives Matter said, okay, we'll stop having protests around the globe. And then we never regrouped again. We sort of just been, I guess, waiting on that moment. Hopefully, we've had some George Floyd since then, and we have just not come on board the way that we were marching every day somewhere, protesting, saying Black Lives Matter, Black Lives Matter, but we're still alive. Young people, I think, if they do nothing else, they need to register and they need to vote in this election. And I'm not going to tell them how to vote. Hopefully they know how to vote, or they don't need to look at because that person is this, or because that person is that. They need to look at who sounds the best for them, who is going to represent them when it comes to the check that comes in for them or their family or their parents or grandparents, who's going to provide the best medical care for them, who's going to do the best for them and their children. Voting is a key factor, and young people have shut that out. They don't, what is one vote? One vote could be the breaking point. And so we need every vote. We also need young people to read more. We need for them to go back and read the history that's in the cast, that's in 1619, that's in the compromise on promises that have been, I love the reading program of United Women in Faith because they always got a social action book there. But there's so many books that tell our history that people, white and Black, Asian, Hispanic, need to know their background. They need to know the history of all of us, and then they can make better decisions on things. Young people also need to understand that they can lose. They can stand up for something and lose their job. They can stand up for something and be put out of some schools. They can stand up for things that are right and be criticized by their friends and their family. But if they believe in what they're standing up for strong enough, it don't matter. It don't matter who my mother and dad said to me, you're on a scholarship. And, just promise us that you're not going to throw that away in what you're doing. And that's why I had to work harder in school my junior year while I was trying to do and keep up with the movement as well. We need to educate ourselves. We need to be educating other folks. We need to have something more than just being on our phones and engaging in text messages and chats and whatever they do. And the entertainment and the drinking and the partying. And I did it when I was in school. I'm not going to tell you not to enjoy that side of life, but you also got to have a cause. And if you don't have something you're willing to die for, your life ain't worth living. So unless you got a family that you're willing to protect and die for, if you got children that you're willing to do everything you can and die for, then you got to stand up for something. Because if you're looking at their future, they're not going to have one if we don't correct the life you're living in right now. And they have to become engaged. I'm hoping and praying that our college students around the world are getting ready for November. They did it when my brother man was elected, and that was part. The younger generation was part of turning over
yeah.
and electing.
Right. So I have seen some promising things in regards to not only our college students, but us informing our sisters that don't have the melon, as I would say, kissed by the sun, because they were 40% of them did not vote and support Secretary of State Hillary Clinton. And so getting information out, having conversations. So I'm glad you talked about the reading program of United Women in Faith. And one of the things that you said, two things. Number one is the kingdom. The kingdom was our study for Mission U, and that really talked about relationships. And so I think that is key as women of color to have the conversations with sisters that might not look like us or have experienced things that we have experienced, and share with them. And then when they hear the stories from you, a friend that they have been on soul care retreats with, they've been roommates with, they begin to understand a little more of that relationship. So I'm glad about that. And number two, critical within the United Methodist Church is the Charter for Racial Justice that was moved and created through May Gray, our first African-American national president now of United Women in Faith, and taking that charter and breaking it down little bit by little bit. And so that's what we have started to do, I know, in the South Central jurisdiction, but not only that, but around the entire jurisdictional pool, really leaning into the Charter for Racial Justice. If you just do one of those things, it allows you to elevate and be a witness to what we are called to do as God's children. And I know as when you served as vice president of the organization, can you share some of the things that you have seen our national office do in terms of elevating and understanding the mass incarceration for criminalization of people of color?
United Women in Faith, oh my God, we had a Charter for Racial Justice support team that was created quite a while back, and we have been training and educating ourselves. The amazing thing to me was this year's jurisdictional meetings in 5 jurisdictions. The whole thing was around the Charter for Racial Justice. And so in the Southeast, we presented a panel, Native American, Asian, Hispanic, and an African American woman. And we asked all of them sort of the same questions, but then toward the end, we started changing the question to how has it affected you? Specific questions to Native Americans, specific questions to African Americans. The charter also has encouraged the support team. We have been working tirelessly in every jurisdiction. It's not everybody that shows up, it's the leadership. The charter for every conference has to have a Charter for Racial Justice team. And I think in the past, it was like, okay, in our conference, y'all got 5 minutes or 3 minutes to do a presentation. And so to do a presentation in 2-3 minutes is difficult. And so most of the time it was a skit, and it was a skit around racism, and it was humorous, so people laughed, but everybody on the stage didn't have a microphone either. So you're doing a skit where people got language and verses and sentences and paragraphs they're doing, and the person on the back row can't hear them because there's no microphone to send that voice to the far back. But the body language and all of that, and the person with the mic is saying stuff, and people are just laughing. But it's a racial moment. It's a moment around injustice, and we're laughing. And that was the way several jurisdictions were sharing that moment. We have done book reads on So You Want to Talk About Race. We have had book reads on white fragility. We have had discussions around concerns. We had a group in some part of the Southeast that protested over, so many things go on today, but was walking around in their sanctuary on Sunday morning with a poster of the name of a woman that had been shot to death by a police officer. That kind of alertness and awareness that she brought to her membership said a lot for her. That's the person that stood up and may not have some church friends now because she walked around the church. She's a white lady, and she's walking around her congregation silently holding up a sign. Whether it was George Floyd's name or Breonna Taylor's name or Ahmaud Arbery's name or Emmett Till's name, she was bringing awareness. And I guarantee you, somebody in that sanctuary. But not only that, the not the Judicial Council, the bishops have come together and said, enough of this. They have written statements on almost everybody that's senselessly murdered. They had an event when George Floyd died. It was like the church can't be silent anymore. And I remember the presentation that was done, and this is during church event, but I remember the presentation that was done, and there was a young Black woman that was on it, and she said she was in a mixed congregation, and she said nobody mentioned his name that Sunday from the pulpit, or nobody walked up to her and said how sorry they were that that disaster had taken place in Minnesota. And she said, I don't feel like I'm at home anymore at this church because I don't exist. And sometimes that comes from people saying we don't see color. Well, you know, that's a whole nother subject. But United Women in Faith have been intentional. And we were doing book reads in the Southeast, but every jurisdiction has their team, their support team, that's assigned to people, different backgrounds, assigned to work that jurisdiction on a regular basis around racism. And the blowout for me was every jurisdiction dealing with it at their event this year.
Yeah, it was so amazing. I was blessed to be the creative director for the South Central jurisdiction. And our president, Ellen Lipsey, asked me, Yvette, will you do a bishops roundtable? So all the bishops that attended the South Central, we did a roundtable in regards to the racial justice that's taken place and the Charter for Racial Justice, leaving them with a challenge to make sure that they include the Charter for Racial Justice in the work that they do in each of their conferences. I can say in Missouri, Bishop Bob Farr, the turning point was when George Floyd was murdered live on TV. And I looked up and I saw him standing next to Bishop Latrell Easterling in front of our Methodist building in Washington, D.C. And he said, I had to make a decision right then and there. Am I going to serve the people of God, or I'm going to serve what people wanted? And so ever since then, Missouri has been on a new transformative track, hiring a culture coach for Bishop Farr and a 90% white council to see the impact it's making on not only, is this not the people of color, but it's everyday human beings and how you treat them. And so we have made great strides. Now we have a poster that billboards that we're putting out, love over hate. And so it's just, you have to start somewhere. And so we are grateful that you have shared how to start, how to be engaged, and witness and understanding that it's surrounded by love and by service.
And we have to, and we can't stop and give up. And that's the regret I do have, that Martin King's life and then his death, we kind of went through a period that we were on a good move. And then the shock of it. The leadership battle, all the things that started playing out, and we sort of went to sleep. And then we woke up one day, and amazingly, Trayvon Martin, Skittles, and orange juice, murdered, and the guy walks away. And then incident, and it wasn't just Trayvon, it was even Rodney King that had done wrong, but to witness the brutalness of the police officers in California that thought they had the control to just literally kick and beat and beat and beat a human being down on the ground. We gotta step up, and we have to research. I encourage groups to always don't jump out there on every little bandwagon. Make sure you know what you're stepping up for, because the worst thing is to step up for something that happened and something else comes out of it. And you realize you spent energy, but you also lost some supporters along the way, because they see that incident wasn't what you thought it was or what you said it was. A prime example, football player the other day gets detained before the game. And to hear his first statement, he did nothing wrong. But then when we see the video of what took place, and he rolls his window up, and then he lets it down just a little, and then lets it up and lets it down, he agitated the incident to some extent. He added to it. If he kept his window down, had conversation, it may have been over with. But the first thing comes to our mind is he's driving a sporty car, he's black, he got pulled over. Because that's our lifestyle. Don't be in something. I was just in the sky, Buick Skylark. Don't be in something expensive. He's not a football stadium. You would just think that, but whether he was reckless as driving or driving too fast, that didn't come up. Sometimes we just need to wait, step back, wait. It was recorded. We saw it. When they don't want to show you the recordings, you may not want to step back too far because those recordings, they're trying to fix them. They're trying to fix them or you will never see them. And that's under a lot of circumstances where cities withhold things, kicking doors in and all the things that happen. But we can no longer be silent.
Absolutely, Claire. Deaconess Claire, I mean, when you just said that Buick, I was driving from a women's retreat last night that I spoke at. And when I pulled on the highway, it was very dark. There's no lights on this stretch of 50 highway. And I saw the police officer in the cut with his lights off and a car, I was in the right-hand lane, a car zoomed up beside me and tried to brake. But the police officer pulled out. I didn't know if he was coming for me or for the other car because I knew I was maybe going 3 miles over the speed limit, but my heart started racing. It's because of what we have seen and what we have experienced and what we have done being followed. We should all be tired of those incidents in regards to how we live our life today. And I can remember after George Floyd passed away and was murdered, I received so many requests from organizations of white women wanting to have a conversation with a friendly face that they may have been in a board or attended a meeting with, just to have a conversation about, is this stuff real? Now, they've seen it on TV, they've read it in books, but it's like they have to know someone personally to understand that these things happen. So as a Black woman during that time, I said, okay, my job is to share my daily life or my incidents at work that happen on a normal basis when I worked for the insurance company. And they were like, Yvette, we can't even believe you went through that, but you're still out here serving God. It's because the strength God has given us to be able to stand up for the injustices. And it's through our fight, through our protest, through our vote. And that is so important. And as part of the advocacy with Black Methodists for Church Renewal, that we have partnered with Church and Society. So they have a voter rights, a voter campaign, Sacred Vote, that has come out to explain to people how to educate yourself, how to vote, how to be engaged. So we are so grateful because you can't do it alone. As you said, you might think you're one, but when you start partnering with other organizations and other individuals, you can make a greater impact. And so the impact that you have made as a person who is always outspoken, being in the forefront, has caused others of us to follow your lead. And if you could just share in regards to, as being a leader, some of the things that you do to take care of yourself mentally during this time of struggle.
You have to. Now I do mine in a weird way. I used to work a 8 to 5 job supposedly that turned into 6, 7 o'clock breakfast meetings and went to supper meetings and wouldn't get home. And so the soul care is so important, and especially mental care. I do things that bring laughter because I'm a joking kind of person. And so if I go into a department store and I'm going to buy a pair of shoes and I end up being followed. Not as much now because they don't have anybody in the stores now to check you out. You got to find me. But I remember back in the day, I would just get fed up with it. Fed up to a point that, yeah, we get mad as the Dickens, and we don't want the anger that has been fed into us by others to come out. We always want to do it in a nonviolent, loving way. God loves you, and so do I. And so finally, I would turn around and I'd say, thank you, ma'am. I do need help. These slacks are size 16. I think I may need an 18. And she would leave and come back with the 18. I was going to buy the 16 or the 20, whatever I had. I was going to buy that. Do you have this in a blue? And when she come back, do you have it in a lighter blue? That lady became this relationship building too. My personal friend, every time I went into that department store, how are you today? And she didn't want to say, is there anything I can do to help you? But she said, get what you think you want. And then, if you need me, just push the button in the dressing room. But because she was following me, profiling me in the store, I made her lose customers that she couldn't help because she had to help me. And it was a release. It was a release of me getting her, because then I wasn't angry when I left. And part of that has been that in my lifespan, I have boycotted so many places because of stuff like that I couldn't even buy food because there was no stores I'd go into because of the way that people can treat you if you allow it to get to the best of you. And so sometimes in the grocery store, when people dart in front of me, I back off and I said, I forgot that the civil rights bill was passed and I got just as much right to be in line before you in front of me. But you know what? I'm a better person than you're going to be because I'm going to allow you to go ahead. And I hope you have a blessed day. And, tell me your name because I want to add you to my prayer list. And it releases that, and that's the way I have to handle it. I have to find a way to get around what used to make me throw Molotov cocktails. Because when I got tired of singing We Shall Overcome, and sanitation workers didn't have no food at home, didn't know how they were going to pay the water bill, some had been evicted, I was like, Dr. King, I get it, but this is slow. And my uncle had a gas station, Ester, and I get gas, and that's not right. And I knew that when I watched him bleed out on the balcony. I knew that that's not the way you go. You got to go about it to change attitudes and to change behaviors. You got to do it in a peaceful, calm way. And why would the world want to get rid of him that was talking about love and doing it in that way, non-violently, when you got all these other people evolving that were gaining strength in numbers? We had a powerful invaders group, nothing but young folks in the city of Memphis. But, And I'm convinced that the government had a lot to do with the KKK. And I call it the John Kennedy, the Martin King, and then the Robert Kennedy. 3 Ks within a short period of time.
Absolutely. Dr. Martha Banks, is there any question that you have for Deaconess Claire Ester as we wrap up?
No, this has just been an excellent presentation. Thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you.
Yes, Dr. Banks, we thank you so very much. And I'm going to turn to Maria now, who has been an individual who has been on all of our calls and who is engaging. And so I'm going to pause and allow her to maybe have any questions that she might have for Deaconess Claire Ester as we bring this fantastic, amazing webinar to a close.
Thank you, Dr. Yvette, and thank you so much, Deaconess Clara. I don't have any questions, but I do want to say how much we appreciate you sharing your story and your heart with us during the last few hours. And I just know this time has been so rich, and I'm just thankful for your witness and your testimony, your lifelong dedication to social justice and to God. Thank you so much for taking time with us this morning. Next week, I will provide the webinar recording link for everyone, so you can watch your inbox. And also, please mark your calendars for the next BMCR webinar, which will be December 14th. We'll be having, Aaron Hawkins sharing on leadership excellence. So with that, thank you. And that's all I have. Dr. Yvette, do you have any final word?
The final word is to say thank you to my mentor, thank you to my friend, to my sister, to Deaconess Claire Ester. We only spent 2 hours today. I could have talked to her all day, but just want you to know that she has been on a trailblazing journey for social justice all of her life. And so now it's time for us to pick up the mantle where you are and strive for justice. Please make sure that your community, your family, your friends are registered to vote. And on November the 5th, make sure you get out and vote, because many lives were lost in order for us to have our rights, our God-given rights as children of the Most High. And with that being said, we will see you on December the 14th when Miss Erin Hawkins talks to us about leadership. Thank you so much for the Bruce O. Innovation Center team, led by Reverend Sue Kibbe, Michael Pollard in the technological booth, and to our good friend and sister, Maria Hutchins. This is Dr. Yvette Richards, the Advocacy Chair for Black Methodists for Church Renewal, and we thank you once again for joining us today. Have a blessed day.